Welcome to our first Browns Town Hall. I'm your moderator, Bud Shaw. We're going to discuss the burning issues of the day in Berea with a week remaining until the NFL draft. Issues such as, the Browns did what? We may need a mathematician for one of these, but if the Browns have 6 picks in the top 100 and keep trading down, in what year will they own every pick in the top 100? We've canvassed Browns fans earlier in the day for their answer to some poll questions, and we'll share those shortly. But first, I'd like to briefly introduce this esteemed panel. Browns reporter Mary Kay Cabot, who has years of experience writing about failed campaigns. Doug Lesmerises from the Buckeye think tank. Welcome, sir. Chris Fedor, who is our Nate Silver, a reference I will no doubt have to explain to him after the show. Chris will project the NFL draft. Lastly, Dan Labbe, who has graciously joined us, despite declaring 0 dark 30 on his Twitter account in the minutes following the Browns' trade from the number 2 spot. We're going to address our first poll question in a second here. The question being, do you think the Browns are on the right track? The results show 70% of respondents saying yes. 22%, probably including some Browns officials, saying, I'm not sure. And only 7% saying no. Mary Kay won the toss, and despite 2 years of watching Mike Pettin, did not defer the first question. Mary Kay, your thoughts on the poll results?
Well, you know what? I have to agree with the respondents. You know, I really actually do think that the team is on the right track, mostly because of Hugh Jackson. He's brought a new energy, a new vibe to Berea. The players are buying in. And you know what? This whole notion of acquiring all these picks, I do like that part of it, as long as they get a franchise quarterback out of this deal in some way, shape,
Well, that's going to be a very familiar topic by the end of this 30 minutes. Chris, where do you stand on that question? Are they on the right track?
Is there a pick for D? Like sort of yes, sort of no.
Tell us now.
Because based on their definition of success this offseason, they have failed. Because they said from the very beginning of free agency that they wanted to re-sign their own guys, and yet their own guys walked out the door. At the same time, I'm with Mary Kay. Having a guy like Hugh Jackson, being able to get the guy that you absolutely wanted for your head coach, that's a huge step for this organization that has swung and missed on a number of head coaches recently. And when it comes to the NFL, it's how high can you go? And that's based on your head coach and your quarterback. So they're halfway there, I guess.
I saw Doug making some notes. I'm sure there are probably points contesting what you just said. Doug?
Well, I think it could be possible that the idea of these guys leaving, the guys they lost, that actually could be a strategy as part of getting to the right track, that maybe they don't want to exactly say that we're going to let everybody leave. I am shocked, however, that this 70% of people saying they're on the right track, none of that is based on actual players on the team. That is not based on talent on the field.
Right.
Players win games. So 70% of people, I guess, like the GM, the coach, and these draft picks that are floating out in the air currently. I would not vote yes. I'm shocked that 70% voted yes, and it's not on the guys on the field.
Well, speaking of floating in open space, how'd Barkevius Mingo look? No, I'm kidding. Dan, your thoughts on the same question?
Well, you know why 22% of people voted I'm not sure is because the whole basis of this team has 12 draft picks, and Sashi Brown's never drafted a player.
Yep.
Andrew Berry's never drafted a player. How can anybody sit here and say, oh yeah, they're absolutely on the right track before we've even seen them pick a player? And that's what we have to have trust in, is can they get those guys right? And that's why I think 22% of people, and kind of me too, have to say, I don't know yet.
Mary Kay, before we move on to the next poll question, am I right in remembering that Ray Farmer once had 11 picks in one draft and craftily, with much craft, turned those into 6 bodies? Is that correct in his first draft?
Yes, I do believe that is correct.
Do you suspect that could happen here, or do you never see these guys trading back up for anyone given what they're trying to do with this
No,
organization?
I think that they will move up a little bit, move down a little bit. I don't necessarily think that they will move all down. I think there could be a chance that they'll move back up. Maybe they'll move back up and take a quarterback at number 22. Bud, what do you think of that?
Good job, really well.
When has that ever gone wrong? That's
in
a
the
lucky.
wheelhouse.
That's a lucky number in this town. Chris, I know you've done mock drafts. I believe you're at what, 9.0 now?
5.0. but
5.0. I'm sorry, there were 4 there that I thought I
It's
missed.
kind of like the McRib. You want people to keep wanting it. You can't give it to them all at the same time.
How do you see the first 8 picks going in your latest mock draft?
Well, I think the first 2 are pretty obvious. I think it's a matter of, okay, which order are these guys going to go in? It's going to be quarterback, just like it was last year. And first, I've got Jared Goff. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. I think he's the most polished quarterback in the draft. And I think he doesn't carry the same amount of risk as a guy like Carson Wentz does. So if you're a team like Los Angeles and you're moving from 15 to 1 and you're going that high and you're giving up that many picks, I think you want to minimize risk as much as possible. So you've got this kid who's smooth, he's accurate, he's tough, he makes plays that you need a quarterback to make at the NFL level already in college. So I've got Goff 1, Carson Wentz 2, the quarterback from North Dakota State. I think Philly's just kind of happy to get one of the 2 quarterbacks. And then I think it gets really interesting because at 3, I've got the San Diego Chargers going with Laramie Tunsil, the offensive tackle from Ole Miss. San Diego is a team similar to the Browns where they have a bunch of holes. They could go offensive line. They could go for some help in the secondary. They could go with a pass rusher. And all 3 of those spots have guys that are worthy of the 3rd overall pick, but I'm going to go with Tunsil because I think Phillip Rivers protecting him is the top thing on San Diego's wish list. At 4, I've got Jalen Ramsey, the outstanding cornerback from Florida State, can play a little safety as well. At 5, DeForest Buckner, the defensive end from Oregon. Jacksonville's a team that was 20th in sacks last season. They had 36 of them. They used the 3rd overall pick last year on Dante Fowler Jr., but he tore his ACL. If you put him on one side, Buckner on the other, all of a sudden, basically in 2 off seasons, you've got the Jaguars putting together a front that can get after the quarterbacks in that division. Brock Osweiler, young dude, Marcus Mariota, Andrew Luck. 6, I've got the Baltimore Ravens taking Joey Bosa, just going with the best player overall. Probably not great for their scheme if they're going to continue the 3-4, but just going with best player overall at that position. And then 7, I've got the San Francisco 49ers going with the 3rd quarterback. And I think there's a lot of debate on whether Paxton Lynch is even worth the pick. But this is a quarterback league, and we just saw what Philadelphia did. We just saw what the Los Angeles Rams did in moving up, mortgaging so much of their future to get a quarterback. San Francisco has Chip Kelly now, and I think they're just going to want to find that answer at quarterback, and I don't think they think it's Colin Kaepernick. So 1 pick in front of the Browns, they take the 3rd quarterback.
Okay, before we move on and check in with social media, Doug, you saw more of Joey Bosa than anyone. What kind of a pro will he make, and do you believe he's a systems kind of player?
I think he is more of a 4-3 end, which I think is what everybody says. I think he's a complete player, though. Everybody was making the defensive end pass rush comparisons of game changers with Von Miller after the Super Bowl. He's not Von Miller. Like Noah Spence, that speed end kind of guy is more like that, the former Buckeye. I think Joey Bosa is a very solid player. I think somehow if he fell to the Browns, I think it would be a solid pick, even if it's not a scheme fit. There was talk a year ago, we thought maybe Joey Bosa would be the first pick. I don't know that I don't think he's quite dynamic enough to be that high. But I think 6, 7, 8, I think if somehow he got to the Browns, he'd be a good pick for them. And if he goes at 6 to the Ravens, it's a good pick for them.
I don't think he can be the best pass rusher on your team. That's what it comes down to.
And I think he's more than that, though. I think he can defend against the run. I think he draws double teams sometimes. I think he isn't necessarily going to be a 15-sack guy, but I think he helps your team in other ways.
I'd worry about bringing in another guy that you have to convert.
Yep.
We've seen that before, and look, every guy is different, but this is your first pick this year. This is a guy that has to make an impact now. If you bring him in and have to convert him, how far back does that set him?
And speaking of that, if you did decide that you were going to take a Joey Bosa and you thought he was going to be the next J.J. Watt or something like that, why not just run a 4-3 instead of a 3-4 and put him and let him do what he does best. Novel idea?
Well, this coaching staff contends, especially offensively and especially Hugh Jackson, that he will build strategies and offenses around his personnel. So
Right.
maybe they'll try that on defense also. We're going to go to the results of our second poll question now, which was, who should the Browns draft at 8? Leader in the voting, Ezekiel Elliott, 24.8%. Miles Jack, Chris's projection, at 19, almost, we'll round that off and call it 20. Buckner, third at 13%. Ronnie Stanley, a name that we haven't really discussed, and I really don't want to right now, at almost 13%. Bosa at 11, and yet another trade down at 11%. Before we move on, we go to our social media expert. Do we have any questions in the Facebook room?
Well, we've seen a lot of names thrown around in here in the comments, mostly Paxton Lynch, and as a guy that they can get later on in the draft. Question from James Ross in the chat room. Do you guys feel that RG3 can win 9 or more games with the pieces that they do pick up in the draft? So, first mention of RG3 here in the roundtable.
Do we feel like RG3 can play in 9 or more games?
Are we saying 9 or more games
Right.
during his 2 years here? Has he got a 2-year contract?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think anyone expects this team to win more than 3 or 4 games. Do they? Anyone?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, so 9 is.
I think that would be a lot. I mean,
that's very
obviously,
ambitious.
I have expressed some concern that this team is falling for Hugh Jackson's, what I call his evangelism. First year on the job, convinced he can fix anybody and make everybody a better player. I just hope that they follow through in the draft and find a young quarterback. I like the 2-pronged approach to settling the quarterback issue here, not just hoping that RG3 can find himself in the player he was 4 years ago now.
I would also say that I would think the Browns, they won't say this publicly, and they shouldn't. I think they'd be disappointed to win 9 games, honestly. I think one of the reasons why they made the trade that they made, moving out of number 2, is because they fully expect to be back in the top 5 next year and have a chance potentially to grab a quarterback next year. Like, this is a different situation this year, and I think Philly is trying to capitalize on finally being in a position to get their quarterback of the future. And they feel like we've got enough pieces around this guy, we've got enough in place that we're not going to be back in the top 10 next year. But the Browns, I think they feel like they're going to be back in the top 5
No,
again.
I have to disagree with you on that. Hugh Jackson really 100% believes that he is going to win games this year.
Sure he does.
I don't think that they're going into this thinking, hey, we're going to try to get the number 1 pick next year. I really don't think that. I think that at least he believes, and he has the team believing, that this is about winning this year.
We'll go back to social media. Joe?
One more question from the chat room. Gary Montgomery just posted, first mention I saw of what about a wide receiver? Anybody out there at number 8 who would knock your socks off as a wide receiver? Chris, you're shaking your head no.
Nope, just not a great draft for wide receivers this year. And there's just no wide receiver that's worthy of being a top 10 pick. The best wide receiver you could argue is Laquan Treadwell. I disagree. I think it's Josh Doxson from TCU. But the range for those guys, and this is an organization for the Browns that is so much about value, right? Maximize the value of the 8th overall pick. There's just not the value for the wide receiver in the top 10. Those guys' value comes probably between 16, starting with the Detroit Lions, and then going through 24, where you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals potentially.
Okay, we're going to move on to our third question of the night, and it's a familiar one. Quarterbacks. Quarterback of the future. Where have we heard that one before? Let's go directly to the poll results from earlier in the day. Paxton Lynch? Is that the right?
Yeah, who they should draft
That
this
can't
year
possibly
at
be.
quarterback.
Okay.
Is that really right?
That's the winner.
Is that correct?
We've
Well, I
stumped
guess
Bud.
it's more feasible than Wentz and Goff, right? Cardale Jones, and I think that's a really interesting name to bring up here, both because we have Doug and Chris on the panel. But Doug, what are your thoughts on where he might go, and would you recommend a team taking him in the 3rd or 4th round?
We did mock drafts for all the Ohio State players where Ari Wasserman and Bill Landis and I buzzed in. I took Cardale Jones at 45 in the middle of the second round. I think he is a quarterback that you take with purpose. I think he's a guy who can be a starter in the NFL. I would not take him under any circumstance if I were the Browns. I don't think Cleveland could handle it. It's not about Cardale Jones. It's about him coming to Cleveland as more than just a quarterback because he's an Ohio State star, because he's a Cleveland kid. And if you're not taking him in the first round to say, we're going to play you for 3 years no matter what, if he's in that locker room as a quarterback for the Browns and he's not the guy, all that extra stuff is going to come with him, and everything's going to be, when's Cardale going to play? Well, when's the guy from Cleveland going to play? 31 other teams, he's just a guy, and I think he's going to be good. Here, he's a story. And the last thing that the Browns need at quarterback is a story right now.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I agree with you. And the other thing about that is this hometown boy coming home to save the hometown team at the quarterback position doesn't work out very well. Brian Hoyer.
We've heard that before?
No.
Brian Hoyer tried to do it. Brady Quinn tried
Brady
to do
Quinn
it.
was, Browns fan.
So, yeah, I agree with you. There would be a little bit extra there. However, I keep going back to seeing Jimmy Haslam standing there at the sports awards with Cardale Jones last year, and boy, did he have stars in his eyes, looking up to Cardale, that size and everything. But, I mean, I don't necessarily think they would do it, but crazier things have happened.
Let me ask this, though. Cardale Jones is a guy that needs to sit for a while, right? I think we'd all agree
Yeah.
with that.
Not very long, no.
What?
Okay.
Not longer than anybody else would. Not longer than anybody that's not a top 10 pick would.
Okay, but let's
Why
look
do you
at
say,
it.
wait, why do you say that? Because having starts at the college level and taking those reps, taking those snaps, that's very, very important.
I don't think, but when you get into questions, I don't think he would have to sit any longer than someone like Christian Hackenberg. I'm not saying he would be as ready as Carson Wentz or Jared Goff, who people are taking to be their quarterbacks. But I think he learned the system. He learned how to play quarterback. He was undefeated as a starter. He played basically a full season. Guys have come out with a full season and played quarterback in the NFL. So I don't think he's a guy that you'd have to say, well, he's not going to be ready for 3 years.
Well, but let me ask you about developmental guys in the Browns in general. Look at Josh McCown, was hurt in Tampa, got hurt last year. RG3 got hurt in Washington. Then you got Austin Davis. Then you got Connor Shaw. The Browns can't pick a guy and say, we're going to sit him for however long. That guy's going to play this year.
Well, that's why
one way
he's
or
suggesting
another.
that it shouldn't be Cardale Jones in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Right? Chris, I don't know how to describe your reaction to what Doug was saying. Is anything
Dumbfounded?
I think
other
it's
than
baffling.
a scoff? There
There
was scoffing going on.
I think it's baffling. I think it's baffling to say a guy like Christian Hackenberg, who started a handful of games for Penn State, started since the day he got there, got those reps, got to see what the defense was doing, learned a few different offenses. I think it's baffling to say that he's not going to be as ready as Cardale Jones, or Cardale Jones is going to be as ready as him, because he just doesn't have the experience playing the position. It's not to say that there aren't things that Cardale can do that Hackenberg can't do, or some of these other guys in the draft can't do. But NFL readiness, I think, is based on experience, snaps, knowledge of the system, seeing a bunch of different defenses, and there's just no replacing the amount of repetitions that somebody like Christian Hackenberg or Dak Prescott even from Mississippi State got instead of Cardale Jones, who, by the way, lost his starting job to J.T. Barrett this past year.
We could turn this into a Cardale Jones show if
How much
anybody wants
time
to
do
do
we
that.
have?
Yeah.
All right, before we do that, Chris, my notes tell me that, and I'm assuming after reading this that you wrote these notes, that you called for Bridgewater 2 years ago.
I did,
We'll-
yes.
We'll gloss over the fact that there was also a call for Clausen somewhere along the way.
That was a while ago.
Okay, so who's your guy now? For if this team picks a quarterback, who should it be? Dak Prescott.
Oh, my God.
Dak Prescott from Mississippi State. Yes, that's the kind of guy who has a bunch of experience playing against top-level competition in the SEC and developed and grew from his junior year to his senior year playing inside the pocket. I want to see growth from a quarterback. I saw regression from Cardale Jones and some of these other guys throughout their
But
career.
Chris-
Dak grew as a pocket passer.
Chris, but what about the fact that they just let go of Johnny Manziel and Dak just got a DUI? I mean, how you have to take that into consideration. I think they're going to want their quarterback to be squeaky clean, face of the franchise. I think they would have a hard time sitting that guy up there and having us hammer away 12 DUI questions on draft day.
Since the Browns drafted Tim Couch, no organization has ignored the quarterback position more than the Browns.
True.
They have never gone after a guy with purpose. They take guys who fall in the draft.
Right.
They take rejects off other teams' scrap heaps. It is time for the Browns to pick a guy and draft him.
But you can't get Goff.
They had the chance to do it this year. It didn't work out. There is only one strategy. It's a three-pronged strategy. The first was trade down, gather picks. Prong 2 is tank this year. Lose with a purpose.
I think
Number
they will lose
three-
with
They'll
purpose.
never do it.
Number 3 is get the first pick next year and draft the best quarterback, which they have not done in nearly 2 decades.
I'm
It's
good with that.
malfeasance.
Fedor, what's the slogan?
It's not
this
going to
year?
happen.
What's the slogan?
What rhymes with Deshaun or Watson?
Do we have-
Anybody out there?
Do we have anyone weighing in on social media on this this heavyweight match that's taking place between Doug and Chris?
We had Suck for Luck. We had Wet the Betty for Teddy. What rhymes
Yeah, I
with
like that one.
Deshaun
That
or
one's
Watson?
Going back to the Cardale Jones discussion, John Christofeld in there, noting that the Pittsburgh Steelers have of late picked up on a few Ohio State guys and been successful. He says, you're all crazy. The Steelers will draft Cardale, and you guys are going to be eating crow when he succeeds Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, let's also point out that the Steelers have pretty strong systems on both sides of the ball. That when
Yep.
they draft a guy and bring him in, that guy can slide right in, play in that system. They can draft guys for fit. The Browns don't have that on either side of the ball yet.
You know, I think I would. Now you're saying that he's going to be gone at number 7, and that could happen. But I would go ahead and draft Paxton Lynch at number 8. I might even move up and draft him if you do think that the 49ers are going to take him at number 7. If they come out of this whole thing with a future franchise quarterback, then it's a win.
Do you think it's possible that the Browns think that Paxton Lynch is the best quarterback in this draft?
I don't know about best in this draft, but I do think that they feel like he could be better than the one they thought they were going to get at number 2. And Hugh was very adamant today about, basically saying, hey, just because you guys are all saying Goff and Wentz are the best 2, doesn't mean that I think that. And he liked Colin Kaepernick coming out in 2011 when not a lot of other people were on that track. So he's got somebody in mind here, I think, and I don't know who it is yet. I don't know if it's Paxton. I don't know if it's Connor Cook. I'm not really sure, but I think I would go with Paxton Lynch at number 8.
Chris Fedor, before we move on to our lightning round, I have a question for you. Paxton Lynch, dinker or dunker? Which is he? Or is
Yeah.
he something more?
Both, actually.
Does he have a big enough arm in your mind?
I think he does.
And mobility and everything
Yeah.
that it takes to be a successful NFL quarterback?
Yeah, but none of those things. When I'm looking at what I want from a quarterback, the traits that I'm looking for, like nowhere do I have height, size, arm strength at the top. It's like the other things. It's accuracy, it's pocket awareness, it's being able to read a defense, it's throwing guys open rather than waiting for their numbers to show up. All of those kinds of things, I think, should matter more than a guy's size, his athleticism, his arm strength. And Paxton Lynch at Memphis did not play in a pro-style system, obviously, threw a handful of passes, at least half of his passes, at or right near the line of scrimmage, and has not shown an ability to do things at an advanced quarterback level in terms of processing information, going to his second read, all of those kinds of things. He's a project.
All right, well, quickly, and I know that's a dangerous word with you sometimes. How many college quarterbacks are throwing guys open?
Jared Goff throws guys open.
Okay, but
That's why he's the best quarterback in the draft.
I don't disagree, but he's not available. Who else fits those? You think Dak Prescott best fits those traits?
Yes, I think he made huge strides from his junior year to his senior year in doing those kinds of things and showing that he can win from the pocket rather than just relying on his big, strong arm and his athleticism, something that he did early on in his career. I haven't seen that growth from some of these other guys.
Okay, now we're moving into the lightning round, and by lightning round, we mean quick.
Can
All
you
right.
define quick? Language of origin, please.
10 seconds.
How fast
right.
does it take you to say yes or no?
We're gonna go around the horn here. First question. Browns are drafting a quarterback next week. Who should it be? I think we've already gotten Chris's answer. Dan.
Ooh, drafting a quarterback. Who should it be? I don't like any of these guys.
It's a lightning round.
No.
Can they get a time machine?
Paxton Lynch.
Don't draft a quarterback.
Well, that question went over
Yeah,
well.
Doug. See,
All right. Would Joey Bosa be a
Jared
good
Goff.
fit for the Browns?
No, I don't think so, because I don't think this system that the Browns are going to run defensively, the style that they're going to have defensively, I don't think it fits his skill set best, and I don't think they'd maximize his potential.
Yeah, I kind of answered it earlier. No, you don't want a guy that you have to convert.
Only if they change to a 4-3.
He's a good value at 8. They could make it work.
All right. Oh, that was a little too fast. I wasn't.
You said lightning round.
Yeah,
you
I'm
said
going to
quick.
move on to Ezekiel Elliott. Again, good fit for the Browns?
Great fit for the Browns. If
But
the
what if he
analytics
slows
say-
the development of Isaiah Crowell?
What about Duke Johnson, too? No, I think the Browns absolutely need a foundation piece of their offense, somebody who you can put the offense in the hands and say, okay, like, you're in charge of moving the chains and getting us in the end zone. And right now, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a game-breaking wide receiver. They don't have somebody that you can make the centerpiece of the offense. Zeke, you could.
God, I love Zeke. I love hearing him talk. I love seeing him run into people. It's a lot of fun. I don't know about a running back at 8, though.
Yeah, I'm not a running back at 8 kind of a guy. I still have visions of Trent Richardson in my head from back a couple of years ago, and I think you can get the running game accomplished with other people, other parts without using number 8.
I watched every snap of Ezekiel Elliott's career, and
He ran with a purpose.
I think I'm on an island here. I don't know that he's going to be great.
Whoa.
I think he's going to be good. Fedor and I disagree with everything. I don't know that he's all that much different than Carlos Hyde at Ohio State, and nobody thought Carlos Hyde should be the 8th pick in the draft. I don't think he's Adrian Peterson. I don't think some of the things that he did best, everyone at Ohio State talked about his blocking as like a lead blocker on a quarterback sweep. I don't think the Browns are going to run that. I would not take him at 8. I don't think he's the value at 8 for the running back reasons, but I don't think, to me, he does not rise to the level of so special that he's the exception.
So no Todd, not a Todd Gurley.
I don't think he's Todd Gurley.
All right, we'll do a quick lightning round, full disclosure, show of hands. Who thought Trent Richardson was a good pick when they made it?
Oh my God.
We're going to go back and read what you wrote. Are you sure you didn't?
You can go back and I will.
Wait a second.
Nick-
Uh-oh.
That was the year you were stumping for Blackman.
Okay. I'll give you that. I had to find somebody. But I was very adamant. Do not pick Trent Richardson under any
I
circumstance.
will say, Trent's still in the league. Austin Blackman, however, is not.
Well, I didn't
Barely.
factor in
there.
the
We
whole.
got Trent Richardson and Terrence West
But let-
making up Baltimore's back.
But
All right.
there's a caveat. Not because of his talent. He was way better than Trent Richardson. I didn't know he was going to be an alcoholic drug addict.
Alleged. Well, that's not alleged. All right. Does the number 32 pick have to be a receiver for a team that obviously needs weapons? Chris?
No, I think it could be a quarterback. I think it could be a pass rusher. I think it could be a cornerback. I think when you have as many holes as the Browns do, I don't think you want to put yourself in a box and make it a position-specific pick. It doesn't have to be.
All right, Ray Farmer. Thanks for chiming in. Dan?
I don't think they're picking at 32. That thing's sitting there for 19 hours. Somebody's going to make a trade.
You, sir, have
Somebody's-
deferred on every question I've asked.
Somebody's going to make a trade on that Friday while that pick is just sitting there because they want somebody who fell out of the first round.
Okay.
I suspect that they might trade up from number 32 back into the first round for somebody that they like, and that might be a quarterback.
I think that 32 is a great spot for a receiver. I think it should be a receiver. I think Chris's point about there's no great receivers in this draft, but I think you could get a receiver at 32 who might be the 4th receiver picked. That's as good as the receiver that went at 14 or 17 to somebody like Michael Thomas from Ohio State. I think that would be a great spot to find a really good receiver.
I want
Okay.
to say it for the first time tonight. I agree with that.
Well, listen, we were out at Browns camp today, and those of us, well, those who could hear what Sashi Brown was saying, those of us who were sitting in the back of the room could not, heard him talk about what he plans on doing in trying to accumulate picks, right? Mm-hmm. Accumulate picks. That's what they did in
Yeah.
trading down from number 2. Should Joe Thomas be traded before this draft? And I would say, if not, why not? But this question is, if so, for what?
We going
You're
around
starting
the
with
horn?
No,
me?
we're not going to start with you. I'm a little tired of this.
Yes,
Doug?
yes. Every minute Joe Thomas is on this team, he loses value because he gets 1 minute older. If the GM is having a slip of the tongue that he's excited for next year's draft, they're trading for picks in 17 and 18. It's not about this year. By the time you're going to build a team that can compete, Joe Thomas is going to be way past his prime. He is the best player to never appear in a playoff game in the history of the NFL. For the Browns and for him, trade him yesterday.
Okay.
You know, they are so committed to telling us over and over and over again, we are not trading Joe Thomas. So it's going to look really crazy if they go ahead and do it. I don't believe they will. I actually think they probably should. I mean, if he is the best asset that they have, their most tradable commodity, and you can probably get a first-round pick for him, maybe even a first and a second. So I would do it.
Dan,
No.
they
You need
should
him.
not trade him.
You need him. Right now, you're talking. Who are we talking about at right tackle? Joel Bitonio, Austin Pastor. They don't even know who they're going to play at right tackle. You trade Joe Thomas. Now what are you going to do with left tackle? They've
Ronnie
gotta have that left tackle at least for another year.
Apparently you didn't hear when Hugh Jackson said, Hugh Jackson's in town, baby. He can fix that. He doesn't need Joe Thomas.
Hugh Jackson cannot fix replacing a Hall of Fame.
All right, Chris?
I say absolutely not. I don't know what kind of strategy it is, on what kind of planet it makes a lot of sense to take your best player in your organization and trade him for an unknown draft pick. There is nobody that the Browns could get in this year's draft because they can't get Jared Goff. They can't get him. So there's nobody that they could get in this year's draft that is going to have the value of Joe Thomas for this organization. If it's RG3, if it's a young quarterback, whoever it is, they need to be in an environment where they can flourish, they can develop, and Joe Thomas helps the development of all these young players on the roster.
That's
But
what
they've
you-
only won
Go
either
ahead.
4 or 5 games in almost every single year that Joe
I
Thomas.
Correct.
think I know Chris Fedor's answer to that because I've
Because
heard it a few
the
times.
organization is dysfunctional, because they can't get the coaching right, because they can't find a quarterback. I can't measure a left tackle based on wins and losses.
But
so
you
why
said
doesn't-
they're only going to
it's-
win 1 game next year. So
Yes,
then why do they
correct.
need Joe?
But why waste a Hall of Fame player when
You're
you
not
could
wasting
get value?
him. You're helping
You're
whoever
not winning
you,
games.
Why do you
if
need him?
RG3 is going to be the starting quarterback, you're helping RG3. You're helping him develop. You're helping him
Do you
grow.
think he's the
If-
long-term answer at quarterback?
I don't, but they might draft a quarterback in round 2. They might draft him in round 3. And if that quarterback has a chance, it's with Joe Thomas in front of him. There's value in creating an environment where young players can flourish.
And
If
I
you
would-
draft a running back, let's say it's Ezekiel Elliott, and he has Joe Thomas blocking for him instead of somebody else, that's going to allow him to grow and develop. There's value there.
And when you say Joe Thomas is their most valuable asset, I think they view draft picks as their most valuable asset. I think Joe Thomas is a player they like, they want to keep. Their most valuable assets are 2 first-round picks next year.
So get
Yeah,
another
so,
one.
so get another one. Exactly.
Okay, slowest lightning round in history. We're going to go back real quickly to Facebook just to see whether anybody has one last question, and then we're wrapping it up.
A couple of guys in there, Michael Thomas from Ohio State at 32. They like the strategy. They think that he might be available. And you know, Doug, you've been really high on a lot of the Ohio State guys thus far. Is that, you know, just from familiarity, or is
I'm
that?
not high on Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not high on Braxton Miller. I can list the guys from Ohio State I'm not high on.
But we only have so much time.
That's a different show.
Yeah, it's a different show. Well, thank you for joining us. It's the end of our first Browns Town Hall. I'm sure we'll be doing this again next year when the question will be, who should the quarterback of the future be? Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bud.
Thank you.